Here's the deal. Sales isn't about pushing harder, talking faster, or flooding inboxes. That's noise, not strategy. Real business development? It's about presence, precision, and knowing exactly how the room feels before you open your mouth. Jake Stahl, author of Own the Room, How to Communicate to Be Seen, Heard, and Respected, has spent over 30 years training teams across 6 countries and 47 states, teaching solopreneurs how to turn conversations into conversion. Known as the mind mechanic, people who have been trained by him say he has the uncanny ability to break down human behavior and rebuild it into real, repeatable influence. This is where communication becomes your unfair advantage. Welcome to Own the Room with Jake Stahl.
Jake, do you ever listen to Alex Hormozi's podcast?
Oh my God, I am a huge fan. As a matter of fact, I have all of his books and I've read them at least once. I mean, you can't not like Alex's techniques.
He's really amazing, and I love the style of his content too.
Yeah, I do too. But you know what? I have to say this. I am part of his newsletter, the Mosey Minute. And I got to tell you, I got an email that made me really, really disappointed in Alex and what he talks about.
I'm guessing this might have something to do with sales scripts. I know you two aren't exactly aligned on that one.
Yeah, Alex and I don't see eye to eye on the sales scripts. And listen, let me make it clear. I have never been a sales script advocate. I've trained 12,000 people over 6 countries in 47 states and never use a script and always leveled up a sales force. So I know my techniques work, but I also know that scripts just typically don't. So let me add some context. Here's the email that we got. He sent out a Mosey Minute and it said memorize scripts in 48 hours. Most sales managers give their team a script and expect them to use it. 2 weeks later, nobody's using it. They're winging it and close rates are garbage. Here's why. You never taught them how to memorize it. It should take 48 hours for someone to breathe the script. Here's the science-backed method. And he gives a method and he very politely claims he didn't invent this, which I think is great. He gives credit to others. But then he gives a method on how to memorize a script. Now, John, listen, I'm all for a script when you're first getting started. We need to get our land legs. I get it. But God, please, Alex, advocating sales scripts, especially continuing to use them, it's just such a disappointment.
Yeah, sales script. I mean, I wonder why those close rates that he talks about, because I don't doubt that the close rates are garbage. But is it really because they aren't memorizing the scripts?
See, I'm advocating that close rates are garbage because they're using a script.
Oh.
Keep in mind that sales scripts work in a certain percentage of the population. They don't work on everybody because they follow a certain structure that appeals to a certain mindset and decision-making method. But when you don't go away from that, you're only appealing to a certain group. So I actually wrote down a list of reasons why sales scripts fail. So this is my counter argument to Alex's email that says that scripts fail because people don't memorize them well, and therefore their close rates are garbage. I'm going to give you my counterpoints to that and tell you why sales scripts in general are a bad idea.
Okay.
So first of all, scripts work right up until the point the prospect interrupts you. The second somebody goes off script, most people speed up instead of listening. So you'll get somebody going through a sales script and somebody will knock them off track. And remember when we had the the vinyl, when you bumped the record and all of a sudden it skipped and you were in a completely different song?
Yep.
That's what happens here. So the person that's reading the script tends to speed up or get flustered instead of listening to what they should be listening to from the customer, because scripts do not teach you to listen. And
Makes sense.
the right. And the rule here is the interruption isn't resistance, it's valuable information.
Hmm.
So if you don't know what to do when you're interrupted, the script was never helping you. And
Hmm.
here's a great example. I know somebody who just got into window sales, and I love this person dearly, and I'm very proud of them for getting into the sales profession. But they were saying the same thing. They said, when they interrupt me in the middle of my script, I find it hard to sometimes get back on track again. Now, the argument Alex may pose is that you don't know your script well enough yet, and you don't know when to pause and to adapt. And I agree to that initially. But if I have to memorize how to be human and adapt, I'm not really selling. I'm following a format.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds to me like it's so easy to get flustered when you can handle all the objections in the world and practice how to handle them and get back to your sales script. But what happens when you get an objection that you haven't gotten before?
Exactly right. And think about this in the context of your relationship. You don't give the same answer every time to a response from your wife. You adapt. If something didn't work great last time, you adapt it this time. But then you're going off script, and that proves my point. Don't do a
Exactly.
script.
I will argue that sometimes the right answer is always, I love you. You're right. And
Yeah,
so in that
I'm
sense,
sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry, that's another good one. I do
Yeah.
use a wife script sometimes, but that's much different and not the ideal way of doing it. Because you mentioned a relationship. Wait, you're this whole dialogue with your prospect should reflect a relationship? I think that throws some people off.
Yes, 100%. I agree. So, John,
Why?
why what?
Why should you treat this like a relationship? Why should you actually listen? Why should you actually give this person that sort of value that they're a person to be had a relationship with when maybe like Hormozi's formula, you can find 1,000 of them and throw the same sales script at them and reliably 10 or 20 of them are going to buy from you.
Think about it this way: you want a relationship with a customer because if you're good at sales, you want to have a long term relationship. If we think about just selling in the moment, we get to the point where somebody thinks, oh, I shouldn't have bought that. It gets to be buyer's remorse. So if we force them down an alleyway, this is why laws are started that says, hey, you have 3-day right to rescission. And that I think is the right to rescission in most states is you can have up to 3 days to change your mind about a large purchase.
Okay.
So if I get somebody comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them, that is another reason for them to stick past that initial buyer's remorse, right?
Okay. So you're
And
not
when we
trying to
go to
fool them.
correct that, no, 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 no. And that's why you want authenticity.
Yep.
With the script, you're railroading them down a pathway. If you learn to actually engage authentically with people, know your product, and sell it to that person's decision making style, you are so far from a script, and yet you're so much closer to building a relationship.
Mm. One of the dangers I feel like to the Hormozi model, I don't know if you agree with this, Jake, is that you're finding people to convince to buy a product rather than finding people who will already value that product.
I think you have a point. When you see these companies that use a sales scripts, like the home improvement companies is a big one, or insurance companies are another big one. You're right. You're sending people out as appointment setters. Let's go out, let's set as many appointments as we can. And then we hope that a certain number of those will verify that they still want to see somebody. And then we'll hope that they still allow a salesperson in their home. And then we'll hope that they actually make a purchase. As far as I know, hope has never been a great game plan,
No.
right? We don't go
No.
into war hoping that we're going to win a certain skirmish with an enemy.
I mean,
We
I
go
hope the
in.
Syracuse Orange win the championship every year, and how has that worked out?
Yeah, that hasn't been the greatest game plan either. But one of the things they always talk about in the armed forces is you adapt, and a
Mhm,
sales script is not adaptable. The person can be adaptable, but the script isn't, and that's why they call it a script.
mhm.
And if you think about this in the terms of the movie, nobody ever gives an actor a script and says, listen, this is just a suggestion, right?
Right.
Feel free to wing it. Don't worry about the words on the paper. Just go ahead and do what you want to do. If they're a really good actor, they may let them diverge a little bit, but a script is not a suggestion. It is a format to absolutely follow.
So maybe the concept of having some guidelines and even a sample script might not be a bad thing. It's just the fact that you're tied to it is what you're saying.
Yeah, listen, I agree. And like I said in the beginning, I'm all for using a scaled script in the beginning, especially when the person's getting their land legs. They don't know
Yeah.
the product. They're not sure how to put the words together. They're kind of stumbling through certain areas. A script is perfect. But
Yep.
if you're telling them, follow this forever and always, that's where we're losing it. And listen, evidence is on my side. No matter how you slice it, evidence is on my side. You take a company that religiously adheres to sales scripts, such as timeshares or home improvement or any company like that that adheres to it, their close rates are 10 to 20%.
Mhm.
On the high end, you may get close to 30, but that's the rare exception. So when Hormozi says in his email, the scripts don't work out well because the people aren't memorizing it well. No, the scripts aren't working well because it's only geared to a certain percent of the populace. That's why
Mhm.
when I go to a party and I want to try to make 10 friends, I don't use the same script with 10 people. I go in, I talk to them, I listen, I understand the way they make decisions, and then I talk to them in a way that's appealing to them. And then I hope that they ask me questions in return, and we go back and forth and we form a friendship. But I don't go to each person and use the exact same opening and the exact same questions, and the exact same lines. And
Mm.
we don't do that with our parents either. Hey, I have a parental script, I have a friend script, I have a child script. We don't do that. So scripting mimics nothing in the way we do things in everyday life.
Well, I sometimes wish I had a script for certain scenarios, but
Believe me.
you're 100% right. And if you go to a party with a script and you got 10 people you want to make your friends, what's the result? You'll probably get one or two friends,
Right?
which funny
10 to
enough is
20% close rate.
kind of consistent. So I don't know, Jake, if you want 20 friends, I guess you got to go find 100 people to try your script on. Get what you're saying, but I think people in the Hormozy camp might fire back and say, so what? You find enough people, your close rate doesn't have to be above 20%. You just have to find enough people and sell a big enough ticket item.
Okay. And here's my problem with that. So, this is the way most corporations look at it. They look at it and they say, if I find enough people and I give the same script often enough, then I'm eventually going to get a customer. But you don't call 1,000 people hoping that there's going to be 20% that become a customer. You're always hoping that 1,000 out of 1,000 are going to become your customer,
In an
right?
ideal world.
In
Yeah.
an ideal world, of course. Well, then why don't you try for that? Why do we say it doesn't matter if I make a bad impression by using a script because I'm just going to call the next person?
Well,
I don't understand that philosophy.
that's a key that you're actually not just not making good impressions, you could be making bad impressions.
Exactly right. We look at the timeshare industry and we say we hate the timeshare industry and who gets suckered into a timeshare? Listen, they're using a script. The reason some people don't like it is because that script doesn't appeal to those people. Now those people are soured towards the timeshare industry. Why is it any different than any other sales process we go through? We
Interesting.
always say
Hmm.
you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, then why aren't you focusing on making a great first impression?
Hmm. What about car sales?
Same camp, right? Now, the car sales, you'll hear somebody like Grant Cardone. He has a series on, selling that a lot of the car companies use to do that. But Grant is the same way. Grant is, let's say the thing that's most likely to get to the yes, and let's walk them down certain paths and pin them in a corner. No offense, Grant. I love you dearly, but that's the way it feels.
Hmm.
And then we'll try to get the sale. But you have people all the time that have never touched a script that are selling in the top 1% of their company every single year. And the reason is they know how to understand a customer, how to read a customer, how to flow and adapt. And they may or may not say the exact same thing every time.
Hmm. So they don't need a script.
They may in the beginning just to get their feet ready, just to get their
Mhm.
land legs, but no, at the end, they really don't. Now, listen, there's going to be certain key phrases you may use. You may find a key phrase that really lands with people. It always lands with people. Go ahead and use it. But to continue to say the exact same thing every time in the hopes that 20% of the people are going to buy your product, that to me is a recipe for failure. And then they use that failure as the goal for next year.
Yes.
And that's the part that really blows my mind. So we closed 20% this year. So next year, if we want 100 customers, we have to make X more number of calls, which means we have X more number of people we need to bring on. Oh, God, it's just this infinite failure loop that is maddening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very you're settling for mediocrity, and that's interesting to me because you think about the people who use sales scripts. I've never thought about them as beginners, but in a way they are because they're not confident enough with their product or whatever they're selling yet to move past the sales script. So whether they're, a 30-year vet in sales or not, you're a beginner if you're still using a script.
Right. And remember, scripts don't sound confident, they sound polite. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is scripts are not meant to instill confidence in your product. They're meant to instill confidence in what the words will do to the customer. And because of that, they tend to come off as polite. And politeness lowers your posture or your overall ownership of the room when the moment actually needs leadership. My opinion on that is authority is not about the wording, it's about timing, cadence, leadership, restraint. So if anybody has ever sounded nice with a script and lost a deal, that's why. You do not have that confidence in the product. You have the confidence in the script. And those are two completely different things.
I totally hear where you're coming from. I just wonder why, people like Hormozi, people like Grant, their messaging is heard worldwide. Their podcasts are so popular, newsletters
Yeah.
are so popular. What is so appealing about this scripting? Is it just the fact that, hey, it's super easy, anybody can do it, anybody can sell a lot if you just talk to enough people?
Because it's what's generally accepted. It's accepted that we're only going to close a certain part of the population. So, what verbiage can I use to increase the odds that I'm going to close that certain part of the population? And
Okay.
again, I want to be clear. I'm a fan of Grant and I'm a fan of Alex. I will continue to listen to his podcasts and I will continue to read his books because I love what he has to say. And much of what he has to say is absolutely brilliant. It's just that in a script arena, we're going to always disagree. Now,
Mhm.
when most companies are looking and saying, yeah, we have a close rate of 10 to 20%, we want to maintain that. Scripting sounds great because it allows you to maintain that 20% close rate.
Got it. Yes.
My argument is, why not take the time you would use memorizing scripts and instead take a course on neurolinguistic programming? Take a course on hook point theory. Take a course on behavioral triggers. Take a course on communication. That is better time spent than burying your head in a manual trying to memorize what you're going to say to every person you come across.
So the bottom line is this: you have two different philosophies of scaling. One of them being we need to reach more people and keep the same close rate, right? Because that'll
Right.
increase the numbers. But
Yep.
you're saying the alternative and better way to do this without sales scripts is we may not need to increase the number of people we talk to, but if we increase the close rate, we have the same impact.
Yes. And John, in one of our previous episodes, we talked about the devil you know, right?
Yes. Yes.
So think about it this way. And this is where I can relate to what the sales managers are going through. So a sales manager says, listen, we're closing $10 million this year with a 20% close rate. So how do we make sure we continue to effectively close that 10 million or grow it? And what we know is if we make more calls, that close rate of 20% happens to a larger number of people, therefore the revenue grows.
Yes.
But then they look at what I advocate and they say, we're taking a chance doing that.
What if it shrinks?
We yeah, we don't have time to build a relationship and build strong communication skills because during that learning curve, we may not make the 10 million. Then my head's on the chopping block.
The scripts are reliable and predictable.
Correct. And think about it this way, John. When was the last time you got a phone call from a salesperson and as they're talking to you, you're thinking to yourself, they're using a script. I can hear it.
Yeah, yesterday.
There you go. And it
It's all the
happens a
time.
lot.
All the time, and it's like the funny thing is to me, first of all, I wonder, now, are a lot of people stupid? Like, because a lot of people, maybe they don't realize that they're using a script, so it's either that some people are stupid or it's that the salesperson actually thinks that you don't hear that it's a script, or maybe they know that you do, but they don't care. I don't know which one it is, but it's
Yeah.
bizarre to me.
It is weird. And many scripts are filled with those questions that really turn me off. Like, if I
Yeah.
could show you a way to double your income in 15 minutes, would you be interested? Listen, I know you're trying to get me to say yes. So I'll say another yes. So I'm more likely to say a third yes, but your questions are dumb. No, I would not be
Exactly.
interested in doubling my income. So you get these questions and you get these pieces of a script that literally turn people off.
Yep.
So, in that light, I would say a well written script is better than somebody who does not have good communication skills or tends to be a terrible salesperson. And then I would argue that your hiring is wrong if you're hiring those type of people.
Good point. Really good point. Now that those questions you mentioned, I think we all probably chuckled because we all have gotten those, whether
Oh,
it
yeah.
be over the phone or whether it be one of those LinkedIn DMs. Um, they kind of treat you like you're stupid too. I feel
Yes.
insulted when I get one of those questions like, really? Am I a kindergartner? You're just
Yeah.
trying to get me to say, yes, tell me more. And
Right.
I hate that. And so that is kind of the scripting model. Now, could there be a sales script model where it's not just this whole idea of yes, momentum? It's actually a better strategy to approach someone.
Right. And listen, there can be. Like I've seen some scripts over my time of coaching companies that were actually pretty good. And they use all the right techniques, all the right hook point theory, all the right behavioral triggers. They even use some NLP. I've seen some brilliant ones. So let's talk about those for a second. Jake, what if the script is absolutely dynamite? Here's my issue. Scripts don't train sales, they avoid it. They keep you from learning how to read tone, hesitation, silence. They keep you from the actual communication piece of what it takes to be a salesperson. So scripts train you how to read and how to find a certain thing to counter a certain objection, but they don't teach you how to relate. They don't teach you how to become a better salesperson.
Mm.
In other words, if I take somebody that's mastered a script at company A and I decide to hire them for company B, I cannot be confident at all that they're a great salesperson. All I can be confident about is that they know how to read. And when somebody objects, they know how to quickly find in the script, or they memorized where to find in the script where that answer is. That's
Mm.
not sales.
Yeah, it doesn't
That's,
help you.
yeah, that's just a pick your own ending storybook, is what it is.
It sounds to me like it's like when you're in school and you memorize the answers to questions on the test, but you don't actually learn anything. Like, all right,
Correct.
you might get past that one test, but then what happens when either the next test comes or when you take another class that builds on that class? It's just, it becomes a disaster. So that's what you're saying in sales. So Hormozi's wrong on this one. I agree with you on that too, but we can't just leave it at that.
No, and listen, here's where I think Hormozi and I definitely will agree. Is the real skill in selling is not always knowing what to say, it's knowing what not to say. And memorizing a script tells you to say the same things every time when scenarios may actually beg you to leave a piece out.
Hmm. What would
So
be an example of that?
so let's say that you have a script that has a price objection in it. So somebody says, "Hey, listen, those windows are going to cost way too much." Many times a script will have in it, "Well, here's why it's a great value, and here's why it's this, and here's why it's that." Remember, one thing I found is price is never the real objection.
Hmm.
It's fear of loss, it's lack of control. So if you can't read in real time what you've triggered in that other person on price, and you just go to a pat answer, you're going to run into problems and you're going to have a 10 or 20% close rate.
Hmm.
So pricing to me is the biggest one because many scripts tackle pricing head on and they're not tackling the fear the buyer has of losing that money.
You're saying handling objections isn't simply formulaic.
That is an excellent way to put it. And if you don't know when to go silent, when you don't know when not to ask a certain question, there's going to be problems. And if silent makes you nervous, scripts are absolutely the least of your problems. And John, we talked about the use of silence on the last episode, how certain amounts of silence can make people very, very uncomfortable.
So the answer to this is not pounding scripts more, it's not memorizing scripts. The answer is learning how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected, right? It's learning how to
Yes.
communicate as a salesperson through listening, through having an actual relationship with the prospect that you're pitching. Now, how do we
Yes.
do that? Because this has nothing to do with memorizing words on a paper.
Right. So the way we do that is to listen to all of our episodes on Own the Room because we
Simple
talk
enough.
about techniques all the time to listen, to have curiosity, because that's the other big point I want to talk about real quick. And I know we're coming to the end, but scripts don't listen, they wait. And what I mean by that
Mm.
is you get so focused on the next line that you want to say that you miss signals that your buyer may be sending that says, you just triggered something to me. You just lost the sale. Because the best responses, John, they come from curiosity, not preparation. And scripts do not typically allow for the curiosity factor.
That's a key piece of this too. And a lot of this you wrote about in Own the Room, how to be
Correct.
seen, heard, and respected. And this is the strata formula that we're talking about, the signal that you wanna make sure you catch. And then the rest of the acronym all the way to action, which is so important. Now, if we're gonna follow a formula, that's a better formula to follow. It's not scripted for every scenario. However, it is rooted in NLP and the techniques that it actually takes to talk with a human to human, not salesperson to prospect. So I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for a formula of sorts, read Own the Room. You don't even have to memorize it.
Exactly. And one thing you said there that is really true is it's a formula, but it's a formula for listening. Remember, in strata, you don't even really start to talk or to sell until you get to the transfer phase. All the rest of it
Yeah.
is listening, understanding, watching for signals, because as we've said before, 80% of what communication is nonverbal. So if I'm not listening for what's being said as well as what's not being said, I am not communicating on all fronts. Strata helps you
Yeah.
do that. Scripts don't. They emphasize talking and pat responses, which are not going to work on everybody.
I think that's brilliantly said. And it goes for, of course, your sales relationships, but any relationship. You mentioned how ridiculous it is to use a script when you're sitting down at a nice romantic dinner and you're out on a first date with someone using a script. How ridiculous does that feel? We laugh at that, yet then we
Yeah.
turn around and then we go, oh, but in sales, of course, we're using scripts. That's how we make money.
Yes,
It's funny how that works. So, Hormozi, you're wrong on that one, brother, but we still love you.
we do. And I will read your next book and I'll listen to your next podcast because everything else you say, I am completely on board with.
But sales scripts, not so much.
Nope, sales scripts, that's just a wrong move.
Thanks for checking out Own the Room with Jake Stahl. If you've gotten value from this episode, share it with the solopreneur in your life who wants to know how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected. Review and rate the show wherever you check out podcasts. And grab your copy of Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. We'll catch you next week on Own the Room.